An emergency UN Security Council meeting to discuss the mass anti-government protests that engulfed Iran has finished up in New York. The session was called by Washington, which has voiced its strong support for the demonstrators. RT's Caleb Maupin tells us what was said during the meeting.
The meeting was called by the United States, an emergency meeting of the 15-member body that leads the UN, the Security Council. And essentially, the USA spoke, and then many other countries spoke, and many of them questioned whether or not the meeting itself was even valid. Now, the meeting opened with Nikki Haley. She is the representative of the United States, and she voiced strong support for the Iranian protesters, calling them courageous, talking about the USA, quote, standing in solidarity with the Iranian protests. She also went on a tirade against the Iranian government.
The United States stands unapologetically with those in Iran who seek freedom for themselves, prosperity for their families, and dignity for their nation. We will not be quiet. No dishonest attempt to call the protesters puppets of foreign powers will change that. If the founding principles of this institution mean anything, we will not only hear their cry, we will finally answer it.
Now, immediately following the remarks from Nikki Haley representing the USA, we then heard from the representative of France. And France is a country that generally agrees with the United States in UN Security Council proceedings. However, if you heard what the French representative had to say, he wasn't exactly agreeing with Nikki Haley. He emphasized the importance of the nuclear agreement between the P5+1 countries and Iran remaining intact, and he talked about how this is really an internal matter in Iran.
Mr. President, it is up to the Iranians, and to the Iranians alone, to pursue peaceful dialogue, a dialogue based on full respect for the fundamental rights and freedoms of the Iranian people. We must react appropriately to what's been going on. In other words, we must ensure that we remain watchful and vigilant about what is happening during these peaceful protests.
Following that, we heard from other members of the 15-member body. We heard from China, other countries, and we heard from the Russian representative. Now, the Russian representative questioned why this meeting was taking place, as this was unrest in Iran, and then emphasized the importance of stability in the region and opposing the spread of terrorism, and why it was probably not a good idea for foreign countries to be escalating and promoting unrest in Iran.
We should thank Washington in this case, since America's energetic and provocative messages to the Iranian people have brought them closer together in their anti-American feelings. We get the impression that some logically unexplainable allergy is keeping the U.S. blind to a rational evaluation of what is happening in the country. They simply want to believe what they're saying is true.
Now, in addition to the 15 members of the Security Council, because the meeting directly related to issues in Iran, the Islamic Republic of Iran was able to then address the Security Council meeting. Now, the Iranian representative, he talked about how Iran is a democratic country in his view, and argued that people in Iran do have the right to protest. However, they don't have the right to do so violently. He then talked about how there have been instances of violence in the recent protests and pointed to the USA being involved in fomenting these acts of violence, and talk about the history of U.S. meddling in Iran's affairs. He went into quite a bit of detail. Now, the meeting ended after we heard from the Iranian representative, and there were no further speeches. Now, no resolution was put forward or passed. The meeting kind of ended unconclusively. So people are wondering exactly what came out of the meeting. Why did this meeting take place? Questions were raised on the floor about whether this was a legitimate meeting of the Security Council at all, and people are wondering exactly what will happen next as we continue to hear support for these protests in Iran by leaders of the United States.
Earlier, we were joined by political analyst and commentator Shabir Hassanali, who believes those who want to foment civil war in Iran will not be successful.
I think those people who said that this is an internal Iranian issue are absolutely correct, because it is. The protest started because of economic problems. People were a little bit upset with certain economic policies, with the price of things, this, that, and the other. And you had Telegram accounts by the barrel load targeting Iran teaching people how to make Molotov cocktails, how to make IEDs, how to assassinate people. This is not normal. And then all of a sudden you have Trump and Nikki Haley and all these people coming along and saying that, we stand with the people of Iran. This is America, Israel, Saudi Arabia interfering, at least from a distance, within Iran's internal affairs. So to create a Syria-style civil war inside Iran, while it is the wet dream of people like Mohammed bin Salman and Netanyahu with their allies trying to do stuff out of Kurdistan and other places, this is not going to happen. Iran is far more resilient, and the government is wiser, and more importantly, the world is wiser.